It's me, Zenobia Darling. You're listening to hashtag Rockstar Life, the Coffee Break podcast. Let's go. Where the hell's my cold brew at? All right, and we're live. What's up? It's me, Zenobia Darling. I have beamed down in Washington, D.C. I'm here with a Bravo podcaster of the Is This Real Life podcast, Mandy Slutsker. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. It's been a weird Sunday. I was out till like 4 last night, but it's all good. I'm here. So this is a coffee break. Before we get started, what are you drinking today?
I am drinking water. Although earlier today, because it's the afternoon, I did have a coffee where I made it myself, but I mixed it with like half of a packet of hot chocolate and then added milk.
Ooh, that sounds yummy.
It was.
That sounds really good. Yeah, I'm having blood orange rooibos from Trader Joe's. I was like, I need some tea in my life today. So all good. So who is Mandy? Like, where can like my little darlings like talk about you? Where can we find the podcast? And like, what is your podcasting journey? Because like you have like a top rated Bravo podcast that I actually was on before.
Oh, thank you. I don't know if it's top rated, but
it's up there. It's one of my faves.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I decided in the very end of the year of 2017 to start a podcast, and I started in January of 2018 because I needed a creative outlet during the Donald Trump administration, and I needed a little bit of a mental break away from what was happening. You know, I live in DC. I work in the cross sector between global health and politics. And so it was just a lot. And it was very fun just to start a podcast. Initially it was about all reality TV, but it really has since forth focused primarily on Bravo since about mid 2018. So I really enjoy Bravo shows, especially The Real Housewives. And I love to be able to have conversations with people that have different views from me and, you know, how we enjoy these shows and what we think of them and why the various people on them behave the way they do and what their thought processes might be like. And just trying to get a better understanding of almost human nature and human behavior. That's sort of what I'm most interested in.
No, I hear that because I have, I know you know this. I studied Vanderpump Rules and Ross Beverly Hills at Towson, and you come at it from the same angle I come at it. Is like there's a lot to learn about ourselves as a human and as like a society watching this. And Bravo has like the way they do reality shows, I always say is top notch. There's something very like Andy Warhol about it, where they're Warholian, they're aspirational, but that also tells a lot about our society. And like I know like a lot of my friends want me to watch like TLC reality shows, and I'm like, they're just not doing it for me. And like some of the like offshoot of like Netflix and like the Amazon Prime ones, I've tried to, but I'm like, there's something about the Bravo brand of reality TV that is like chef's kiss.
I agree. I think the TLC shows are, people sometimes are on their phones, like recording themselves. It feels very confusing to me. I feel like there's a lot of repetition. I don't always understand the premise. Sometimes it's people that are engaging in really, really unusual behavior. Such as like 90 Day Fiance, like meeting someone on the internet and like talking to them for multiple years and deciding to get married without really ever meeting them in real life. Like that's a more unusual situation. Whereas with Bravo, I feel like they find personalities that would thrive on reality TV and then just put those people together.
Oh, totally. Because that's the other, like, 90 Day Fiance, like, I like it when they go to the other way just because I like different world cultures, but, like, I feel the same way. Like, it's an unusual situation, and a lot of them are not made for reality TV, whereas, like, I mean, Karen Huger, she's made for reality television. Like, Kristen Doute.
Oh, my God.
Reality star. Like, queens, icons, legends. Like, that's what, and I want there to be, like, a polishness to it. Like, because the TLC shows, like, they're not aspirational. I'm like, I can look down my street and find people that fit that bill. Whereas on Bravo, there's like, you kind of know them, but they also have this like, you're looking up at them. So then when I do like my stand-up comedy making fun of them, I'm kind of punching up instead of like, punching down, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I just find it so enjoyable,
Yeah.
the shows.
And I always find there's like a connection between like Bravo and like mental health. Like there's something where like that really like, because it's helped me through some really tough times, like through the pandemic. I mean, I remember when I was on your podcast, it was I think November of 2020. So we were like deep in the pandemic. And I remember it was the Potomac fight between Monique and Candace, and like that got me through.
I know it's like sad, but I feel like Bravo finds people during really dark moments in their lives and then carries them through to better moments. I've rarely met people who were like, oh, I watched this during a tough moment in my life and then I stopped as soon as my life got a little better. I started watching, I've always watched Vanderpump Rules and Beverly Hills, but I didn't start like really getting into Bravo until my mom died. And that was really like nice just to be able to get my brain to stop hurting for a little bit and to focus on something else. And, scripted shows were too difficult and movies all had death. And I just wanted something just to, I don't know, to entertain my brain. And it was so nice. And now, totally. It's fun and I tell other people who are going through rough moments, I'm like, okay, now is the time to start Vanderpump Rules.
Yes. Because Vanderpump Rules, like, best reality show ever made. Like, I've gotten a lot of my friends to actually watch it, and they're all not reality show people, and they're like, what is this world? But like it's that like serotonin jump. It's like that, like, it's so good. Ugh, I love it. And I rewatch Vanderpump Rules probably twice a year just because there's something about it. Like seasons 1 through 6 are probably like the best ever. And this most recent season was pretty good too. But because I remember when I was actually on your podcast, like, I don't think I've ever like publicly talked about this, but like I remember recording, it was like a Tuesday or Wednesday afternoon. And I remember halfway through, and that was also my first podcast I ever was on. So like I could tell I was like already nervous and like kind of like figuring it out. But I actually got a text that my grandmother died halfway through the podcast recording. And
oh my God.
I remember saying like breaking me like, why is people texting me? And then like and after I got off, I was like, oh, that's why they were texting me. But like I remember talking about Bravo with you kind of like pulled me out. And then that night I just like turned on like season 1 of Vanderpump Rules. And by the time they were in Vegas fighting with Jax with like the white sweater, it kind of like just like it made me just feel good because the next few, and there was a bunch of like family drama too. And it was like, that kind of got me through. And then I got into like the international Real Housewives. Like I love the Real Housewives of like Johannesburg, like Durban, like the South African ones and the Nigerian ones are like top notch. So, and the Melbourne too, the Melbourne, Australia, like, so that's kind of where I got into that. But like, I don't know, there's that connection where it's like to get through tough times. Like I love that.
I agree.
So you're Washington, D.C. based. So what is that like? Because I used to live in DC. I mean, I live in Baltimore. Baltimore's a little bit different than DC, but it's still a part of the DMV. Like, what has your experience been like talking about Bravo in DC? Because I find there's people who like just love it, and there's a huge niche of like Bravo watchers, and there's other people who are like, oh, that's a trashy reality show.
I think it's more the latter. And I don't know if it's trashy. It's just like people haven't dabbled in reality TV. And so they're more unfamiliar with it. I have a dog named Stassi.
I love it.
If I were to walk her anywhere else, people would ask me, is that from Vanderpump Rules? But walking around DC, the main question I get asked is, did you name her after the Easterman Secret Police? And I'm like, which is Stasi. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, no, I'm Jewish.
Yeah, you're like, we're good. Do that. We're
good. But yesterday I got asked the first question I didn't know the answer to, which is like, well, I knew the answer saying, no, I didn't name her after that, but I didn't know the person. They said, oh, is this named after, it was like a really young, like 20-year-old or something, Kylie Jenner's best friend. Mm-hmm. And I said, I actually don't know who Kylie Jenner's best friend is.
I'm like,
I
think of Stassi. I think of Stassi Schroeder. Like, that's like...
Exactly. And when people know, it's so fun because they get a big kick out of it. And I say, oh, it's because she's a little white bitch. Haha, you know, and it's fun. But, you know, it's interesting that we're talking about DC and Bravo this week because this is probably the first and last time that Bravo would ever be quoted during a congressional hearing. But Representative Robert Garcia quoted Heather Gay from the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City during her finale big speech, the receipts, timelines, you know, all that stuff.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Was quoted during a House Committee oversight hearing. So that was like all my worlds colliding.
Yeah, that makes me really... I saw that and I was like, this is amazing. And there is a lot of like... I feel like a lot of politicians secretly watch Bravo in some way because I have this feeling I'm like, they know, I think they might know who these people can, like the younger ones. Like I was thinking George Santos, he knows who all the housewives are. Like he would know. Yeah.
But Robert Garcia definitely watches, but I actually think most would not watch and most are really unfamiliar with
I could see that.
Anything related to it. Like, you know, even when the Kardashians would come to the Hill, like people know who they are because they're the Kardashians, but I don't know how many actually watched any of their TV shows. Yeah. It's more staff that I think watch than the members. Yeah.
Because I feel also they're so busy. I'm like, run the country. Like, don't watch reality shows. No, but I love when stuff like that happens. So, and I know in Baltimore, it's like, we're kind of removed a lot from the political sphere, so it's a little bit more like creative and like
it's artsy.
Yeah, and it's artsy. And I always say like there's Real Housewives of DC from like 10 years ago, but like the Potomac ladies really are a little bit more Baltimore-esque. Like they do have political like tie-ins sometimes, but for the most time they just are like doing it up here, and like that's what I appreciate about it because Baltimore is like I don't know, it's one of my favorite places. I mean, I call it it's my home, so it's amazing.
Yeah, it's interesting, but the music that they use for the Real Housewives of Potomac is go-go music.
Yes.
And that is DC's like music. And so I find that really cool. What I don't like about Potomac is how far away all the women live from one another. They are not in a small knit community. Yeah. And, you know, I wish they all lived a little bit closer to where Garcelle is, like in Bethesda. Mm-hmm. That makes a little more sense to me than, you know, having like where Candace is and then where Wendy is and then some people up in Baltimore.
Yeah, Wendy's up in
like near Pennsylvania. Yeah, she's like
Carroll County. Yeah. Like that's like far for me. And I'm in like East Baltimore. And I'm like, that's like driving from that to like Ashley's house in Arlington. I'm like, that's crazy. But I also love watching Potomac because I'm like, oh, they're on 29. Oh, they're on 405. There's the GW Parkway.
Yeah. No, and when they're in DC and filming in DC, I really love that.
Oh, I do too. Yeah. Because it's places like, I remember there was a brunch episode with like, it was the one where Ashley and that creep that she was married to got into like a fight. And that was like a brunch spot that I've actually like performed at in drag. And I was like, why does that look familiar? And I was like, oh, duh. And it's like fun stuff like that where I'm like, I can kind of see it. And when Town was open, like I remember I've met a lot of them at Town. That was on U Street before like it closed. When did it close? It's been closed for a while. But I remember I would always like run into them, like Monique, Candace, Shasha. I did have a Giselle run-in one time there. She was at the pizza place next door. Of course, it's like 3 a.m. And she's her and like I think Karen was there too because I saw a blonde wig. And she was like getting pizza. They'd go back because they were partying there. And like, I just remember that. I remember being like so struck by how gorgeous these women are. And like, they all were really like friendly. And it was also interesting because it was when Monique and Candace were like cool, like before they kind of had their feud started.
Ah, what a different world.
Oh yeah. So have you had run-ins with them like in the wild, like in DC or like in the area?
No. No, I have not. I mean, I did see Karen and Giselle at Erica Jane's concert many, many years ago on U Street. That was fun. But Ashley's probably the one that is closest to like my group of friends. A lot of people that I know live in Virginia, and a couple of them, one in particular, like their kids are the same age and in the same like preschool class. And so they don't watch the show, but they know her because she's a very active parent with the school and everything. Yeah. So, you know, they know her through that, but they don't really know anything about Housewives.
Yeah.
So I don't have any friends that like watch Housewives that also run into people. I mean, Candace also tends to know a lot. Like a lot of people know her because she
Mhm.
went to Howard, and I live very, very close to Howard's campus. But yeah, I mean, I had to basically go to BravoCon to actually meet them.
Yeah, I hear that. I hear that. And like in Baltimore, I know I've seen Mia before because she used to live across from the Visionary Art Museum on Key Highway in Baltimore, and like I always am at that museum doing stuff. And like I remember when they were filming, I remember seeing a camera crew one time, but like I didn't think anything of it. And then I was watching it, and I was like, wait a minute, I was like, that must have been her. But also, I mean, they're always filming weird stuff because it like in Baltimore, just because it's such like a creative city, like you can easily go anywhere and like they're gonna have like they're filming in an alley. So I guess kind of thought it was that, but then I think back of it, but then also like I mean, the geographical locations though. It's like, I mean, you got Hanover with his like, which is no, Giselle's in North Bethesda. Who's in Hanover? Is
Robin.
that's Robin near the Arundel's Mills Mall? And I'm like, these people are driving 2 hours. Like, I just can't. I
Yeah.
can't fathom that. It's like I have friends. Like my sister lives in Laurel, but it's like it's really is sometimes like separate worlds, and I wish they would capture them more.
I agree.
Yeah,
And I wish they would just like find people that live a little closer to
yeah,
each other also. Like when they bring in someone like Wendy, like she's too far,
yeah.
or Mia, like I think Mia is like a great
Hmm.
addition, but it's like Mia, like, I mean, I'm sure her kids like are in school in Baltimore and it makes sense to stay there, but it's a different city. It's not a suburb of DC, which Potomac is and which the
Yeah.
show started as.
Yeah, and like there's a little bit of crossover like in like Columbia and stuff like that, but I'm like I don't know. And like I feel sometimes there is a different vibe between like Giselle and like Mia and Wendy and even Robin's from Baltimore. So and she is probably the most closest to what a lot of my Baltimore friends are like, which I actually love that representation on there, but I don't know. So let's get into it. So right
Okay.
off the bat with Bravo, who are your top 3 favorite Real Housewives?
Okay, so my favorite kind of housewife, and they all can't be like this, but
Okay.
my favorite kind is usually someone who is delusional, but in a
Yes.
funny way and
Yes.
not harming others, right? So,
Yes.
not a delusion where they are mean to others or harm others. So, Karen Huger is number one. I think Sonia Morgan is also fantastic historically.
Oh,
But
yes.
now, a new fave that I really love. I have two kind of newer favorites. One is Dr. Nicole
Yes.
Martin
She's
from
amazing.
Miami.
She's amazing.
And it's nice because she's actually quite brilliant
Hmm.
and she is a practicing physician. And I really enjoy, like, she doesn't have to be delusional in order to be interesting. And so that is kind of a step away. And then I have found myself really loving Heather Gay after meeting her at BravoCon and then reading her book. I feel like maybe I misjudged some of her behavior from prior seasons.
Yeah. Like I've heard that she's like really nice in person and she's like really cool and chill. So
Yeah, she is a special person, and I feel like I understand her after reading her book a bit more.
oh yeah. So what is she I'm always interested when like what do these people smell like? Like what does Heather Gay smell like when you met her?
I literally do not remember and the smell of anyone.
I hear
I
that.
don't. It's not something like it definitely wasn't bad because I
Yeah.
would remember that.
Because I'm always like, what
But
perfume are they wearing? Like, I don't know. I'm a very like scent oriented person, and like, I know when I met like several people, I'm like, oh, is that what they're wearing? Is that what they? Okay.
that's so funny. No, I have no idea. But she was just absolutely fabulous. She's very beautiful
Yes.
and very like she's thin. She's not like these other women must be stick figures in order to like for her to look how she looks next to them. She is a like beautiful, like her body is
Oh
gorgeous.
yeah, no, she like I like when they were just in Bermuda, I was like, her body is sick. I'm like, I don't know why, because I remember when she got announced, everyone was coming for her saying she was like trans and whatnot. And I'm like, that's like mean.
What the hell? No,
And I'm
she's
like, she's
gorgeous.
gorgeous. I'm like, she like has like a like she looks healthy. Whereas like I look at some of the other ones and like I mean we got Erica Jane like oh I'm on hormones. It's like bitch no it's Ozempic. Like we know what that is. Like I'm not judging it, but at the same time it's like there is this like extreme thinness that keeps happening that I keep like being very cognizant of, and I'm like I'm happy that they have like they're casting like natural people, like not like people that are like have disordered eating and are like I don't know. There's like
Everyone else has disordered eating though. Like I think she might be like one of like her, Garcelle. Like there's a couple people who just seem to have like a more healthy relationship with food where they're not like terrified of it. But you know, that also says a lot about our society that so many women, you know, have these very unhealthy relationships with food, especially in certain cities.
Yes, like
that's what I found. Like in Beverly Hills, it's like the eighth housewife is an eating disorder.
Oh, totally.
Right. It's you know, on New York, like the seventh housewife was, you know, alcohol.
Oh, totally.
Like there's like always like a thing, kind of like what's the like you know, extra housewife. And yeah, it makes me very, very sad, but it also is, you know, a reflection of our culture.
Yeah. And I know like I'm in recovery from eating disorder. Like, so I think I have a more sensitivity to it on Beverly Hills. Cause I know like Teddy Mellencamp, like I cannot watch her because I feel like she promotes it in a way. Like, and I'm like, girl, like and like Kyle this season is doing it. And I'm like, we gotta like stop waking up at 5 and working out for 3 hours. Like that's a little too much. Like to me, that I'm like that's triggering that in me, but it's interesting with that because that is such an LA thing, and like I'm surprised more the DC ladies don't, because I do know a lot of people in like the recovery community that are in DC, and it's like, and also going to like New York, like I know a lot of people in New York who are like in recovery from alcoholism, and it's like so that's kind of interesting because they are like little like snapshots of that city and some of the issues that the people there live with.
Yeah, I would say the Real Houses of Potomac and Real Houses of Atlanta have the more and Jersey.
Yes.
Aside from Jackie, you know, who is in recovery, you know, most of them they eat pasta. They're Italian. I mean, obviously now they're all like trying to out thin each other.
Yes. Oh,
but like kind of old school New Jersey, it was like I'm making spaghetti and meatballs. Like, you know, it's not that they eat that every day. Right. But it's, I don't know.
And it's like cultural too, because they're having like Sunday dinner and it's like, let's do this. And also New Jersey's so family based that it's like, I don't know. But my favorites, my number one is probably Dorinda. She's getting a little too dark though, I will say. Like there definitely is a meanness coming out in her. But like Dorinda is like my number one. Like she's spooky. She loves like the paranormal like I do. But she also just is like so like messy and just fun, and like I feel like she's the one I most like. And then Lisa Rinna is my other top favorite. Like she's like, I don't know.
Prior to her behavior on the last couple of seasons, I really enjoyed Lisa Rinna. I thought she was so funny. She didn't take it too seriously. And then she actually completely changed, in my opinion, and became incredibly serious about the show and took the show too seriously and became sort of like a Monica type figure, like trolling what she did on Instagram. It was just absurd. And I actually think she had like a social media addiction.
Oh, I think so too. Yeah, totally. And she was another one that kind of triggered the eating disorder. But like, I don't know. I feel like there's so many other things about her though that I love. Like she has that like, I say it's like a Joan Rivers, this like workaholic, like always hustling, always, and that's something I really respect in people. And like she was the first one that was there, and she's also known like she's bigger than the housewife. And I think that is something that like I wish they would cast more people like that, like in other cities. Like Denise Richards is like that. Like it's Denise Richards. It's like she's bigger than the show, but she's adding in a different light. Whereas like someone like Monica, I'm like you're coming up because you're like you are a housewife. Like that's what you aspire to be. Whereas like Lisa Rinna is just Lisa Rinna.
Although I feel like they really flopped with Denise. Denise did not end up being good for reality TV. And so, you know, some people can do it and some people can't. And, you know, it's, and then in the other cities, like, how would we know people, right? People are more well known.
That's true.
Aside from like Jenna Lyons, right, who was known before being cast on the reboot of Roni. Like, how would we know new people in Atlanta if we're not from that area or know, you know? So in Beverly Hills, you know people from Hollywood if they're actors, but yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, and with Denise Richards, like I like when she just like pops in, like just recently and she comes in like clearly she like was nervous. I think she took something and was drinking and just came in like shit faced, messy, like broke the fourth wall. Like I like her in that capacity, but as a housewife, it was like. I don't, and her husband got too dark too. I was like, ooh, there's a little conspiracy theory leaning in there that I'm like, I'm not comfortable watching.
Oh, he's flat out conspiracy
Yeah.
theorist. And I think that says something about her to be married to someone
Yes.
like that.
Yes. Oh, totally. Because I'm like, I feel like you could have like a conversation and like especially when she was getting into like pharmaceuticals, I was like, and she kind of acted like that sometimes with production towards the end, and I'm like, girl, but like I like where she and like Camille is like that too. Like I don't want Camille as a housewife, but if she pops in once or twice a season, that's when I'm like this queen icon. But if she's on there, I'm like, get off the camera, like bye. So I love it. All right, ad break. I gotta pay for all this damn coffee I'm drinking and tea I'm spilling. It's me, Zenobia Darling. So, as many of you know, I'm more than just a podcaster, stand-up comic, and drag queen. I'm also a very accomplished painter and photographer, and you can check it all out on ZenobiaDarlingCreative.com. I have an art blog on there sponsored by the Harford County Cultural Arts Board, and just all my paintings, photography. You get podcast stuff. I have an art film that premiered in September that you can buy on there too. So make sure you check it out. It supports me, supports the podcast. All right, so let's get back to the podcast. So how are you feeling about the reboot of New York? Because I'll just be honest, I hated it. Like, I couldn't get into it. I felt like it was too like almost forced for me, and like I just wasn't gelling with it. Plus, like Legacy Roni is like, it's like my number one. Like Vanderpump Rules is number one, but like Housewife, it's like the core like old Legacy Roni is like my number one. So
I enjoyed the reboot. I feel like next year is going to be a lot better because they didn't really know how to do it, and they were like truly they were a little too much into the trauma bonding and then like trying to hold each other accountable for sharing more information about themselves, which was very odd.
Mm-hmm.
But I enjoyed the cast that they had, especially Brynn. I hope she like dials it back on some of the flirtation because she is so clever and funny. And she is someone who I just think adds so much. I loved Jessel. I did a complete 180 on her. I mean, I find she's exactly that like Karen Huger, like just delusional, but not harming anyone. And I think that's just how she is. Yeah. And you can't, and that's such an interesting quality to me, like someone that's just like that.
Yeah, they have that delusion.
And I don't know that she could change, which I appreciate, like Karen Huger can't change.
Oh, yeah.
And Sonia Morgan is just Sonia Morgan. Yeah. Like she can't pretend to be a different version of herself. Whereas some of the other housewives, like when Dr. Wendy, like see feedback about them and completely change their personality the next season. I appreciate the ones that didn't. And then Erin really reminded me of like what I view New York as.
Yes.
Like Jewish, loud, in your face, that kind of stuff. That was fun. I think it'll be really good. I was over Roni, the old Roni, and I am very much over it. It ran its course. The last season was terrible.
Oh, no, that was one of the worst seasons ever. It's kind of
like
epic.
Black Shabbat.
Oh, it was one of those things where I was like, only Legacy Roni can like sputter out that iconically because it was so bad, and like I felt like they needed to like definitely like rejigger it, but like that last season was rough.
And I do like older housewives rather than younger, so that was part of the problem with a little bit of the reboot. But I just can't watch Dorinda and Ramona at all anymore.
I'm done with Ramona. Like I'm like, I can't. Dorinda's I couldn't get into Dorinda on the Ultimate Girls Trip. I was like, I love you, but I'm like, you have like an edge, like a mean edge to you. And she was like that. She was like
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. With Tinsley, she was like that on the show. She was. And it's just like, it was getting worse and worse and worse to the point where I'm like, I can't even remember what the good Dorinda was.
Yeah.
Honestly, can't remember. And, Sonia is like, and Luann are great, but like they've got their own thing going on. Let's just have them do that thing. I don't need it. Yeah. So I'm over like all Legacy, and I couldn't watch the Ultimate Girls Trip. I watched the first 2 episodes. I did not enjoy it. I was not entertained. I'm sure I will finish it at some point, but I'm just like, okay, this reminds me why I didn't
Yeah.
want to see these people on my screen again.
Like it was way darker than I remember. Like I remember with like, because there was Sonia, and like towards the end, I'm like, you were like struggling. Like there is something like really like not firing right in your brain, and I'm like, it's like really concerning. Like I got that towards the end, and it kind of like fell apart. Like it was like the first 3 episodes had that, and then it just like sputtered out. And like Kristen was never one of my favorite housewives, and like Kelly Ben Simone also has some darkness in her from like back in the day, like that I think people forget, and she still has that. And that was something that struck me. Was I was like, I remember New York City being dark, but like the Ultimate Girls Trip really like crystallized how dark of a housewife franchise that was. And I agree with you. It was unwatchable. Like there was many parts where like, I mean, I was like texting, I was like, on the Apple News app, like reading the newspaper half like in the middle of it. And that's normally when I can tell like I'm not jiving with Ultimate Girls Trip. Whereas like, I mean, even with like the Ultimate Girls Trip at Dorinda's house, like that was kind of unwatchable a little bit for me too. Cause I'm like, I like it, but like Dorinda's still dark. Like it wasn't fun Dorinda.
But I didn't enjoy Dorinda on that, but I enjoyed the other women. Like
Yes.
Phaedra on that was really good.
I love Phaedra.
It was interesting watching Tamara on that, Brandy on that. Like all of that was so interesting to me. So, yeah, I'm just over those women, I think. And I wish that there was a group of women of that age that we could like reboot around, because I do want to watch like older women. I don't want to watch women my age as much, although as I get older, they'll all become my age eventually, or I become their age. But they just were too mean to each other. They have too many problems and they're not addressing them. So it felt like a hamster wheel. Like they all are haunted. They're haunted by their past. They can't get over their past. They, every time I've seen Sonia, she's so funny, but she seems like she's mixing alcohol and pills.
Oh, totally.
And I'm not like, that's just my impression. And it's not cute, and it's not like she's funny sober. Why can't she just stay that way?
Yeah.
Well, I know why, right? It's hard,
but also like, I mean, they're like, I wish that's the thing about the reboot of Roni that I wish they did, was they would cast older women. Cause I want to see like I love a broad, like an older lady, like that kind of like a John Waters character in a way. Like, and like they had that, and like the newer ones, I'm like, I can see there's like bits of it, but I'm like, I want like an older lady. Like there's something about that like I kind of am very captured with. And like, cause Sonia starts talking about the townhouse on the Ultimate Girls Trip, and I'm like, how many seasons have we dealt with this fucking townhouse? Like, I'm done with it. Like, sell it. Like it's almost a little bit like Grey Gardens, like Little Edie. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Very.
And I'm like that documentary is dark, and I'm like, why is Sonia like having that? And also, are you familiar with the show Absolutely Fabulous? It's a British sitcom with like Jennifer Saunders. It's like, it's a huge drag reference. It's like, Sonia has that vibe. They're kind of like delusional, like socialites who are like major, like alcoholics, like party too much. Sonia has that vibe. And I'm like, can we be sober? Because I've seen her at shows in DC, at drag shows, and she's amazing. So I get that. It's like, come on, girl.
Yeah. And she's great sober. Yes. We've seen her sober on the show many different times. Yes. She's so witty. She's so funny. And, it's tough. Yeah. It's tough.
No, I get that. All right, so let's move on to Salt Lake City. So I just rewatched the season finale and the first reunion. It's like, this just like scratched that like Bravo itch in my brain. It's just like a good massage. I was like, this is amazing. Like I actually did like a whole like stand-up set about it, and like a whole coffee break episode on the podcast, because I was like, I started like really engaging that theater brain, and I was like, I got to record. I was like, it's 3 a.m. I'm like, this is too good. So what are your thoughts on it?
I loved it.
Yeah.
Loved it. I'm a little worried for next season, but I said that last season. So we'll see. There needs to be not Monica, but a firecracker that is thrown in, because it gets everyone else working harder.
Yes.
And it's been fascinating to watch, and it's been fascinating for them to finally talk about Jen Shah, honestly.
Yes.
Because that's what we've been wanting the whole time. Like, just be honest about this. And I understand now why Heather couldn't be. She, in her book, her experience, and not everyone's experience is the same way, but like with being Mormon was kind of a cult like where you do things and you don't ask questions, and you do them because everyone else is doing them and because you're expected to do them, and this is what you need to do, and you're taught to literally ignore your intuition.
Yeah.
And she
got
like so good at it.
Wow. I never thought of it like that. Wow.
And I didn't until I read her book.
Yeah.
And like all the times that things seemed wrong and she continued anyhow.
Yeah.
And that she's ashamed of. And like, especially when she was working on her mission and trying to convert people, that like kind of, tell them that all their problems will be solved if they just accept this way of life. And then Jen Shah is a cult personality.
Yes.
She is a cult leader. And so she was able to, she knew Heather would be the perfect person. Like Heather is like primed for that. And Heather is loyal and she doesn't give up. She stayed in her marriage. It wasn't good for a very long time. She stayed in her religion and that was not working for her for a very long time. And she just doesn't give up until basically like everything ends.
Yeah.
And like her husband literally had to leave. Like that marriage was not working. And until, he left, she wouldn't even acknowledge that the marriage was over and he had moved out for over 9 months. She didn't want to tell anyone. She made the Christmas card, just the girls. Like she just wouldn't acknowledge that was happening. She's very good at blocking out reality and ignoring intuition and just kind of making things look different. So that kind of made sense where she like realized after Jen probably went away, this is so unhealthy. I've lied for this woman. This woman is not trustworthy. And I got kind of conned by her, Yeah. And so that was so fascinating to me, like, because everyone else was like, why is she proud of being a ride or die for Jen Shah? And I'm like, no, actually, she's not proud. She's explaining why she did it.
Yeah.
And that it was wrong and that she doesn't want to get caught up in that again.
Yeah. It's almost like
that's what she's trying to say.
Like it was like the trauma of her like upbringing, like and all that still, and like that like mindset still playing out. Like that's fascinating. I've never thought of it like that because I could not for the life of me figure out why Heather would not just be like, she gave me the black eye. And I don't think Jen like flat out punched her. I think they were just drunk and roughhousing. And Jen, I think, just goes too far. But then also I could see Jen totally punching her in the face. Like, so it's like, but I wish she just would come out and say, because also we all knew she was going to jail. It's like, we all knew who this person is. Like, I don't know. And like Monica has like that Jen Shah darkness to her. Like there's something,
definitely.
Like I made a joke that she's a millennial Jen Shah, but I'm like, there's something about her. I'm like, I don't fully trust you. Like I don't like, there's definitely like a double narrative happening or like a false narrative. And I'm like, this is not something. Like, we've seen this before, and I can totally see her getting, like, randomly arrested like Jen did. Like, I'm like, let's count down that, which, I mean, could happen. I don't know. It might.
I mean, she acts like she's so much better than Jen Shah. Jen Shah is terrible. I mean, she ran this terrible crime ring, and she got caught, and she got punished for it.
Yes.
But Monica acted as if she was part of bringing down Jen Shah, and she was not. Yeah. She was not part of that. Yeah. For that stupid page, that, Reality Von Teese, that was not dedicated to bringing down Jen Shah because of her crimes. It was dedicated to bringing her down because she treated her quote unquote employees poorly, even though these people didn't have contracts, and a lot of them weren't getting paid.
Oh, totally.
So they're not really employees. So it's like you're in a willing, abusive relationship. It's all kind of messed up, but to act as if like you're this moral person that was like involved in taking her down. No, that was the Southern District of New York.
Yeah.
That took her down.
Yes.
That was not you.
Yes. Who they have a good track record of taking some real horrible monsters down. It's like, yeah. And now, I mean, she's in jail for what? Like next like 6 years. It's like good. Like she needs to be there because she stole millions from elderly people. Like, it's like, it's so crazy to look at that crime, and I'm kind of like, because I remember that first season of Salt Lake City. I remember the first episode. I'm like, where this money is not adding up. Like, because that's something I do a lot is like, I like to count money and I'm like, how do they afford this lifestyle? And I can normally tell when there's like a house of cards that might be falling down. And the first time she got on screen, I was like, something's not adding up. I was like, the money's not like, she shouldn't have as much money as she's flaunting. And so whenever all that happened, I wasn't shocked. I'm like, I could see that. I could see her being shady and doing something. But I mean, I still was riveted. I mean, I love watching that stuff on television.
Yeah, no, I definitely didn't put things together until much later.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know, you don't know where people
Yeah.
make their money. And some people, people have questions about the DeBros and I'm like, you don't understand. He has some family money and then he runs this like incredibly lucrative practice.
Oh, totally.
Anthony from Miami, he also made money not just from being a lawyer, right? So like that's what people are having difficulty. Yeah, he's made so much money from property and, I'm sure he had something in his background also. So there's a lot of reasons to explain why people have so much money, but why she was so obsessed with flaunting it in a way that was like so over the top.
Yes. And do you know who else has that quality that I'm like, I've been picking up on? Alexia from Miami. I'm like, something's not jiving with me about her money situation and that husband she has. I'm like, there's something not right. Like my little spidey senses are tingling and I'm like, this is all allegedly. I can't prove it. This is me talking about characters on a reality show, but I'm like, there's something's off and I'm like really picking up on it.
But Alexia wasn't flaunting her wealth.
That's true.
I didn't think. That was different. Like there may be money issues, but she's not someone who's like, I'm on a private jet. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. Everything I wear is like designer. Like she's not overdoing that.
Yeah.
So, if there is money trouble, there's money trouble, but it's not. I don't think it's necessarily coming from like a fraud situation.
Oh no, I don't think it's fraud. I just think there's something. Yeah. There's something just off, and it's like, but with Jen Shaw when she was on there, I got that vibe times like 1,000. And like there's been other housewives that I've kind of had it with. Like I remember like some of the early OC housewives I went back and rewatched and I was like, how come I didn't pick up on that before? Like I remember the iconic one where Lynn Curtin's kid like got evicted. Like that's the type of stuff where I'm like, okay, I remember that before that happened in that season, I'm like, I could sense the money issues. I could sense there was something not right. And then, she's getting evicted where her kids are answering the door, her like daughters, which that's like a dark history in Real Housewives. Like, did you ever watch old school Orange County like that? Did you ever go back and rewatch it?
I missed a couple parts, but I should go back and rewatch.
Because
I've gone back and rewatched New York, Atlanta.
Iconic, amazing. Oh,
yeah, I'm trying to think of the other ones that I like. I even went back and watched Beverly Hills first 3 seasons because I was like, I feel like I need to like revisit this.
Yes.
And that is so much darker than I remember.
Yes.
And it doesn't age well, like the way that they were treating Taylor Armstrong and questioning her and not, being supportive because they were like what she's doing doesn't make sense. I'm like, what she's doing makes perfect sense if you understand domestic violence.
Yes.
Like she is covering for him and she is telling you the truth. She is like, she hasn't been able to figure out how to get out of this.
Yeah.
And she keeps like a couple steps forward, then a couple steps back. She tells you something and she doesn't want it to be on the show. Like,
and you could tell like, and let's just get into Beverly Hills because like I have a lot of thoughts about it, but going back, like I always say, like, and the same thing with Vanderpump Rules, like people think like, oh, LA, sunny, beautiful, gorgeous people. And it has the darkest undercurrent out of the entire Bravo universe almost. And it's like Beverly Hills, like I recently went back and watched that first season and I was like this was like a year ago. And I'm like, I was the same way. I'm like, this is such a dark show. Like I could tell, I'm like, it's fascinating. You could see that cycle of abuse. You have the addiction, and then you have the whole like Kim and Kyle dynamic, and Kim was clearly like deep in addiction, and you don't know about that till the end. But now you go back and rewatch it with that lens, and you're like, wow, like she was fucked up most of the season, and Taylor too. Like that's and I feel like they're getting back to that a little bit in Beverly Hills. Like we're still focusing on like the darkness with Kyle, and also like, have you been watching Paris in Love? Like on
no, I haven't.
Because there's a lot
but people say it like reveals Kathy and like her behavior.
It's like, and I'm a diehard Paris Hilton person, but there's a huge crossover because like Kim's in there, and it's almost like the other piece to Beverly Hills this season because you're seeing like the Kyle side, and then you're seeing like the Kathy side, because that's why Kathy refused to be on this season of Beverly Hills, because she was filming Paris's show, and it's done by the same production company too. So it's like, I believe Shed or Evolution. I forget which one does it.
Evolution does,
yeah.
Beverly Hills. Mm-hmm.
So, and that's been very fascinating too, because I'm watching it this season, like the most recent episode where Kyle's talking to Kim about it, and I'm like, oh, and Kim has the same hair as one of the scenes that she had in Paris in Love, and I'm like, this is fascinating because you're seeing the opposite side of it, the kind of the continuation of it. But what are your thoughts on Beverly Hills this season?
So I enjoy it. I really like the people on the show. I think it is thriving without Lisa Rinna.
Yes.
You know, one thing that I will say about this season of Beverly Hills, but also especially about Salt Lake, is that I am so impressed that nothing leaked.
Yes.
Nothing leaked by the women, nothing leaked by production. So you don't know what's coming. And that is what I want to get back to with Housewives. Yes. I'm tired of things being talked about on social media, and then you like watch it and it's not as exciting watching it, knowing what's going to happen. So I'm interested in seeing. I find the whole Kyle thing very interesting because she's telling us some parts of it, but not all. Yeah. And I think that's to protect her children. Mm-hmm. I think they really don't want her to talk about certain things with Mauricio, but we're able to put pieces together. This woman, and this is something I guess Eliza Rosen, who interviewed Kyle before, asked her once, were you raised to keep secrets? And Kyle said, wasn't everyone?
Fascinating. Yes.
And Eliza goes, no, not everyone was raised to keep secrets. And so I notice on families where things aren't talked about openly, there's a lot more issues. Yes. I mean, all families have issues, but families who are able to talk openly have a way of being able to at least try and address issues than families that don't discuss things. Yeah. And I feel like Mauricio has been unfaithful, it seems. And
I mean, but how many times throughout through the whole series has there been Mauricio cheating rumors? I think it's been almost every season, and I feel like people forget that. Like, and Lisa Vanderpump was a huge one trying to like agitate that bubble. Like, I remember the season 4 where in Puerto Rico, like she was agitating it from like doing Lisa
Vanderpump. Tabloids.
Yes, and it's like, I'm happy that they're finally like we're getting like some type of payoff or some type of like I don't know, we're getting that like not resolved, but they're talking about it on camera, or Kyle is.
And I think she is alluding to it, right? Like he is inappropriate on social media. And I think she was starting to get tired of it because she would have to, and this is all allegedly, sell stories to get stories about him wiped away.
Oh, totally.
And that's really crappy. And then, you know, of course, with her friend dying, I think that was the impetus. I don't think it was other stuff. I think it was really not the Kathy thing. I think because that had been going on her whole life, right? But the friend dying and her kind of questioning everything.
Yeah. Because it wasn't
and reevaluating.
Because wasn't it? It was a suicide, but it was like right out of the blue. Like, and so like that's like, I mean, I've had that happen to friends of mine, and I mean, just like I know me personally, there's like that's a big thing. Like that is a big like life altering moment where you really like take in like your life and kind of analyze it, and you're like, oh my gosh. So like I like that we're kind of seeing that happen like through Kyle, and how she is kind of like reevaluating everything, like because you really figure out like what's more important, like what you really want. Life is way too short. So
yeah, no, I agree. I wish she would be a little more open and honest the way that she expects everyone else to be.
Yes.
I appreciate Sutton being so open and transparent with different things in her life. I appreciate Erica kind of coming back and saying, I messed up and I treated you all poorly and my friend isn't here anymore. So like, I'm going to work on building relationships with you all.
Yeah.
I appreciate all of that. So
I will say though,
I'm enjoying it.
Erica Jade is probably the housewife I like. Larsa Pippen's up there too, but one of the housewives I like hate the most. Like I remember Erica Jane before she was a housewife, when she was like a gay famous like pop star, because she would come and perform. Like she came and performed DC several times, and like I've always heard stories that she's not a nice person, that like she's very cold, she's a diva, and like she's on screen and I'm just like, girl, like I don't like and just being a drag queen, I notice this with her the most. Like there is a drag quality to a lot of housewives where a lot of them have that camp quality, like they take a lot of like drag queens take inspiration from them. But with Erica, there's something where she's almost appropriating drag culture and drag lingo
Oh,
and that's something that like I've really been noticing in the past like 2 seasons where I'm like, I don't think the way she talks and whatnot is very genuine. And it's just stuff where I'm like me and my drag friends, I mean, we talk like that naturally, but like with her, I'm like, I feel like you have been like she's always been around gays. I mean, that's like a known thing, but it's almost to the point where I'm like, it just feels very appropriationist to me. And that's something that like I've really been trying to wrestle with because also a lot of drag queens have started to turn on Erica. Like I've heard there's 2 really famous drag queens, Willem Bala and Alaska Thunderfuck. They have a podcast. And Willem just recently came out like a few months ago on his podcast and was like bitching about Erica and how she's not a nice person. And it's kind of time for like the gay scene to turn on her. And I feel like she's starting to feel that heat a little bit with this season, especially because Lisa Rinna did pander to the gays. And that was a little bit there with Lisa Rinna too, was that like drag appropriationness, like especially in the later seasons. And like, and now that she's gone, I think Erica kind of saw that and is trying to like save face. Plus that the whole thing with like Tom is just so unbelievably dark. And it just reveals so much about like judicial corruption and like, just how messed up the California court system is. So it's just like, I don't know, like there's a lot with Erica.
Yeah, I would argue that Housewives watchers don't care if she's nice, right? Like some we really appreciate that are nice.
Yeah.
And some were like, that makes sense that they're not nice. And I still want to watch them.
Yes.
And she's just very inherently watchable to me.
Yes.
What's interesting is people want to crucify her for the Tom stuff, but there is like, she was not doing it herself, right? She was benefiting from it. And then what we had a problem with is that she wasn't showing empathy to people that were victims because she was so focused on herself being a victim of Tom. But there are so many but then people seem to like be okay with what Jen Shah did a little bit more. And I'm like, that is like way worse.
That's
like
worse.
That was criminal. What she did was not criminal. If it was, then, she would be indicted by now.
Yeah.
They've gone through all the evidence, right? So I enjoy watching her try to like make the show and be part of it and like reestablish herself. I do think she's someone who is a very kind person to those that are close to her, but has a very tight circle. And I find that very interesting in the Housewives because Housewives tend to have a very large circle.
Yes.
Some of them just keep people in their circle that should not be in their circle, right? And she, I appreciate, keeps it real tight. And I say that about Katie Maloney as well. People say she's not as nice. I say she keeps a tight circle and she cares about the people that matter to her and the people that don't, they don't. And I think everyone would be better served not caring as much about everyone, about like the broader public.
No, I totally agree with you. Like I like it's interesting you say that because like I do like my housewives to have, it's like that delusion. I like them to have a little bit like villainy with like delusion, but doesn't hurt anybody. And like with Erica, I do look at it like I've like in the drag world, it's called pulling trade. Like I know a lot of friends that have like rich sugar daddies, and Erica like has that. And I'm like, she just was like, I don't think she knew about it really anything, but I also think that like, she's kind of just like was cashing the checks and living her life, not really thinking about where the money was coming from. So it's like, I get that. And that's why I'm like, just there was stuff like there's that one scene where she had like the mascara running and crying to Kyle. I'm like, I know what that is. Like she's always used waterproof mascara. Like that's such an easy drag technique. And it was stuff like that where I'm like, girl, like you're not Tammy Faye Baker. Like you're not like you're not on like it was stuff like that where I'm like, girl, like
yeah, I know she was trying to get sympathy for Tom hurting her.
Yeah.
And I can see why she would be frustrated, but the way that she played it was just so cold and not grounded in reality. And, I feel like she's a little more grounded in reality now and really leaning into like making her own money.
Yes.
Which I appreciate.
I definitely like this season of Erica. There's still issues, but I'm like, she's coming, and I like that she kind of is also having a little bit the delusion, because I mean, clearly, like, she's working out more. She may or may not be taking Ozempic. I don't really care if she is, but like, the other housewives are shading that, and she's like, it's hormones, and like, I like that type of like fighting on the Real Housewives. Like, I like it when it's like little stuff like that, not deep dark stuff, just like little things that they say that it's like, oh, a little white lie, like, I'm not revealing the full truth, but we can still shade the hell out of her. So. And like,
yeah, no, I'm enjoying her on the show this season for sure. Yeah.
So let's get into Miami a little bit, because we kind of talked about it a little bit. I have to say, Miami is probably my favorite franchise right now. It just scratches all the itches in my brain. It reminds me of like old school Housewives. They still have that feel, but it's just like, it's chaotic, it's fun, it's got an East Coast feel, but it still has that like beautiful West Coast weather, or like the tropical weather where it's like, oh, it's cold here in DC, and I'm like, we go to Miami and it's 80 and sunny, and I love it. I keep watching. I got my mom watching it. It's the first Housewife franchise she ever watched was the reboot, and she fell in love with it. So it's like I have that bonding experience with my mom with it, and it's just, I love it. Like the whole, I missed Lisa, I miss Alexia, I love how Larsa Pippen, like, I love to hate Larsa, because I always say,
yes, she's a really good villain.
Yes, like there's a difference between like hating somebody and loving to hate somebody. And I'm like, I love to hate Larsa, because I'm like, she is so full of it. And like, they're not afraid to like troll the hell out of her. Like, oh, she's never had body work. Girl, you have a different body and face from the first season.
Yeah, I find it so colorful and so fun to watch with like all the colors, and I appreciate like all their outfits.
Yes.
I don't know how expensive or like brand focused they are, but they are fun to look at, and I miss that on Housewives, like that kind of fashion where it's just fun and bright and tropical. Julia, I absolutely adore. I
love
find her so
I love her.
Interesting. Her life is, each one of these women have very interesting individual lives.
Yes.
And that doesn't usually happen all together. Like all of them have a story.
Mm-hmm.
You know, every single one of them has something to share. And I'm just really, really enjoying that. I feel like Gertie is just incredibly brave to be sharing her journey and still film with everything going on. And and Dr. Nicole is just, she's my absolute favorite.
All three of them are such good Housewives additions. It's like
incredible.
All of them. Like, I love Dr. Nicole. Like, I love someone who's smart but can still play the game. And Gertie, like, I like it this season because she's dealing with something so real that like it's kind of forcing the other housewives to really get in perspective. Although sometimes with Lisa, I'm like, I don't know.
Lisa refuses. Lisa will be a victim till the day she dies.
Totally.
I do know someone that used to date Jody, which is really, and has nothing but positive things to say about that man.
He's a good dude.
He's like a good dude. They're not even comparable, but the fact that she's living off his money too is very problematic. And the fact that she won't peel back at all with her spending habits is absolutely bonkers. It's hard to watch. And then she just plays victim anytime her friends bring up like real issues with her. But I'm just absolutely loving Miami. I find it so fascinating. I love the Julia and Alexia friendship that's growing.
Yes. It
seems very real and very real. And Alexia was honestly someone who I really didn't enjoy last season. Mm-hmm. She was such a doll at BravoCon, so engaged, so kind, so appreciative. Thank you guys for coming. We appreciate you so much. You know, just very kind. And you know, I've always had issues with some of her stuff. Like she makes a lot of excuses for Peter, her child. That is weird.
That's a whole dark subplot of Miami that I'm like, go back and watch like the early 3 seasons, because there was some darkness back there too. And it's but I get that.
So,
but I think also because it is a reboot, they're appreciative. They understand, like they have a humbleness to them that we haven't really seen in other housewives. And it's, I enjoy watching that. And they also know how to play the game, but they're playing the game that was like from 10 years ago still. So to a diehard Bravo person like me, I'm kind of like, I miss housewives like this. There was something about it where it was a little bit lighter, it was a little bit breathable, and it was a lot more fun. Where sometimes on Beverly Hills and like Salt Lake, it's like you're dealing with like deep, heavy stuff, which I like. Whereas with Miami, it's like there's deep, heavy stuff, but it's also like it's moving quickly and it has more of the comedy elements to it. And it's also they're fighting about. I mean, there's some stuff where it's like, yeah, they're having some bullshit fighting, but like it still has like a lightness to it, which I like.
Yeah, I think it's so fun. And what's interesting about them is like they all actually are friends with each other.
Yes. Which I love.
And that is very real. Like they truly hang out when cameras are down. They are very close with each other. And I miss that because it seems as though Kyle only hangs out with Dorit when filming.
Oh,
and
totally.
you know, all of them just don't hang out with each other. Although Garcelle and Sutton seem to hang out.
Yeah. And I find that...
But you know what I mean? Yeah. Like on other franchises, it's like they get, especially on Potomac, those ladies do not spend time with one another.
They're not actually friends. They're
not friends
on the show. Like,
yes.
Whereas in Miami...
And I like the friends.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like Dr. Nicole is hanging out with Gertie and it's Alexia and Marisol are constantly together and Lisa too. It's like, I like that. The only one, Larsa's one where I'm like, are you really friends with these people? But
Larsa's very good friends with Lisa.
Yes, which I appreciate. So
right, like that's a real friendship there. They hang out all the time. Mm-hmm. You know, you've got Julia and Adriana. Like every single person there seems to be very close with the others, and there's a sisterhood and pulling together, like what they did for Gertie.
I love that.
Aside from Larsa.
I absolutely love that because it's like, you know, cancer is a big thing, and it's like, you know, that you got to pull together, and like you could see they generally are like, we're doing this whether cameras follow us or not. We're gonna be there for her, and I really enjoyed Gertie like calling out Lisa and Alexia fighting, and because Alexia got it instantly, like in that most recent episode, she was like, we got it, like I'm good, and of course Lisa's still bitching, but it's like I like that where like there's a moment where the gravity of life seeps in and it kind of shifts from like a bullshit fight to that. And I don't know, it's just Miami just does it for me. So I mean,
I love it.
Yeah. So back in the day, like did you watch it back like when it was?
No, I watched it for the first time during like the Omicron, like when everyone was like sick that time, when like even when like everyone had COVID, like that period, I decided I didn't want COVID until later. So I was just like, I'm not going to leave my house for 6 weeks basically because everyone I know is sick. It was just, I've never been in a situation where every person I knew was sick.
I know,
and
that's happening like right now. Like I know so many people that have like, it, and I'm like, I'm staying home. Like, like even last night,
I'm
like,
still out and about, but like, you know, it wasn't like that was crazy. And so I watched all 3 seasons of Miami and had a great time.
What did you think?
I thought season 2 was incredible.
Oh, season 2.
I thought season 2 was one of the best Housewives seasons. You know, it ranks up there in the top 10. I really enjoyed it.
So like, what would be your top favorite Real Housewives like seasons? I know that's a quick question, but like it might take a lot of thinking.
Potomac seasons like 3, 4, and 5 were like really, really good.
Yes.
You've got Orange County season 10 is incredible.
Yes. Oh yes.
There's a couple really good Beverly Hills seasons. Like season 5 is really good on Beverly Hills.
Was that the first one that Lisa Rinna was on?
Yes.
Where like they did the whole Amsterdam fight.
Yes.
That
one was really good. You know, there's when Bethany came back.
Oh yes. Yes.
Those ones were really good. There's just so many.
Season 10 of Roni was good. Season 3 of Roni was really good. Oh yeah.
And I would argue that season 4 of Salt Lake.
Yes. Season 4, it's up there. Like there was every single episode of that last season, Salt Lake City, like it was running on all cylinders. Like it was everything. I was like, this is high theater. Oscar Wilde would love it. Like, yeah, I get that. But Miami season 2 though, because that was the one Alexia was a friend, because I think that was when Frankie had his accident.
Yeah,
she was removed. But I mean, you had Leah Black, you had Anna, you had Karen. It was, I loved it. Was that
they were nuts.
Joanna Krupa too, who like I was explaining that to my mom because she was like, who's Joanna? And I was like, just read this. And I got into the whole Brandy saying she had like
Oh
a
my
small
God.
pussy or something, and
Oh my God.
I'm like only Brandy would say something like that, and then Joanna was like suing her for it, and just like I love that type of stuff in Housewives because I'm like it's like pop culture history, and me being like the pop culture like lover I am, I'm like I remember that, and I like that little nugget. Like I want them to bring Joanna back. Like I want her as like a friend of kind of do like one or two scenes just so we can get her because I like seeing Leah Black last season. This season we got was it Anna that came back? Yeah, it was Anna.
Yeah, but that was a flop.
Oh, totally.
You have to have people come back that like sort of want to come back, but they're not. Their whole lives aren't surrounded by it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just. But if none of them are friends with Joanna, then it's like
no, that's true.
I like that like people coming back who are legit friends, like on Beverly Hills. You
like
know, seeing Faye
Black,
Resnick and Camille. You know, like
Faye Resnick. Ooh.
I love Faye Resnick.
I do too.
You know, seeing those people come back who are legit friends.
Yes.
It makes more sense. Like Teddy being there for Kyle. That's like legit her friend.
I will say I am very tired of seeing Teddy Mellencamp on my screen. It's like she was popping up in Orange County last season. She's popping up this season. I'm like, I like that she's actually friends, but like Teddy Mellencamp is so like she's like a wet blanket to me. I'm just like, why is she on my screen? Like
on screen, she doesn't translate, but I feel like in real life, she must be a good person because so many people enjoy her, and I really appreciate the attention she's bringing to melanoma, and I am very worried for her health.
Yeah, because like I mean, you know, and that's actually interesting you bring the melanoma because like I have like. I feel like a lot of my friends now, like we're all in our 30s, and we're all kind of rectifying with like being tanning bed people back in the day. And we're like,
oh God.
And so we keep seeing that. And I remember like Ariana on Vanderpump Rules had a melanoma scare too.
She did too.
And it's like, I don't think people realize that. Like, and I love how people don't wear sunblock. Like PSA, wear sunblock. Like, yeah.
Yeah, but this is like the thing with skin cancer. It's like if it pops up, it's something that was started 15 years ago.
Totally.
It wasn't
You
know, so and with Teddy, it's much more serious than the Ariana. I mean, Ariana, it's very serious, but like she's had like 12 removed. I mean, they're doing skin grafts. It is in her lymph nodes. It is. There's a problem.
It's scary. And I'm sure she like grew up like probably like on the beach. It's like stuff like that. But I think people forget.
Well, she said she went to tanning beds.
Yeah. Which I think
in high school.
Yeah. But I mean, I remember doing that. And I'm like, I remember like, I just had one of my friends just had to get 2 moles removed. And it's because of that. And she was like, yeah, I love tanning beds. Like there's addiction to them. But at the same time, I'm like, let's think about this.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start wrapping up. Let's get into Vanderpump Rules, my absolute favorite. So I know you have actually read my thesis, so it's on my website. Like, what are your thoughts just on Vanderpump Rules as a whole? I know we kind of got into it, but like, it's like,
so
who are your favorites?
Wild that it keeps transforming. I always get a kick out of Sheena. She's been on since the beginning, and she's not changed at all in terms of who she is as a person. She's matured, but like her personality, what she finds enjoyable, like she's such a people pleaser. She's, you know, like some of the things, like a little bit of the delusions that don't hurt anyone, that kind of thing. That's been fun. I've always enjoyed Katie, and I really want people this season to see sort of like the emancipation of Katie Maloney. You know, she was treated so poorly in her marriage by Tom Schwartz, and because he is so charismatic, people
he's such
didn't
a dud. He's
acknowledge.
Such a dud of a human being. Tom Schwartz, I'm like, get off my screen. And like, this is all allegedly, but like, he definitely has there's a drug subtext, some type of addiction subtext going on. Because I remember there was like one reunion, he just was full out gray. And I'm like, what is that? I'm like, I know what that is. Like, and I'm happy that they're divorced because like, I always felt like he always kept Katie down. And I'm like, there's sides to Katie, like early Katie I like. And like Tequila Katie, I felt like I was to deal with Tom Schwartz. So I'm excited that she's like growing and like is actually standing on her own. And I kind of want to see her dating. And I kind of like the bisexual journey that she has. Like, I want to see that.
I am all for her. I do want to see Tom Schwartz still because I am very invested in his story. Yeah. I feel like the backstory of him is not well known to a lot of people, but he did grow up in an abusive household.
Oh, he did?
And yes, and there are like court records to prove this. His parents stayed together until my God, I don't know what year, but basically his mom had a restraining order against his dad. And that's why only his mom was at their wedding.
That explains a lot. Because I feel like we always like, okay, there's the triplets, and you can always tell there's something, and then Schwartz had.
And I
like,
bet he tried to like felt protective of
yes.
them and like always trying to like, yeah. So, but like still loves his dad.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, that's
like, and maybe,
wow, I've never, this is like completely new to me. This is like, I love this. So,
yes. So I mean, and there's court records. So like
Yeah.
there was something going on and they're divorced, but they like had to file for bankruptcy.
Mhm.
It was just a very complicated scenario. And, you know, people who engage in abuse aren't necessarily like terrible people
Yeah,
who can't change,
Mhm.
you know, but, and also just because someone is abusive doesn't mean you stop loving them if they're your
Yes.
parent.
Yes.
And that I think is a really complicated sort of situation. So I felt like, and Tom, because his family was struggling financially, he basically paid for everything and was responsible for his whole family for a very long time, and I think still is. Like,
Yeah.
so that's something that people don't really know about him, and I think also explains why he runs away when people are fighting.
Yes.
Like
'cause
he cannot
it would
handle any
trigger- it would-
conflict.
yeah. Because I mean, if you grow up in an abusive household, you're going to be triggered by conflict. Like that's something I've seen.
Right.
So that's so, like, I've never thought of Tom like that. I just always thought he was a dud. And like, that's fascinating. Like,
There's always a reason why people are
Yes.
the way they are.
And like, what did, like, how come they don't like show this stuff on? Like, I want to.
Well, I bet he doesn't want to talk
Yes,
about it,
that's
and I
very
bet
true.
it involves people that don't want. I'll bet his brothers don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
I bet his mom doesn't want it out there. I bet his dad certainly doesn't want it out there.
Ooh.
And so, if he's not willing to share that, but
Yeah.
there are definitely police records and there's divorce, you know, things that you can find on the internet. So I remember kind of hearing something about it and then looking into it a little bit more, and I was like, okay, there's something going on there.
Yeah.
I think also in Ariana's past, I think her dad
I think
also.
there's something. Yeah, I definitely can see where there's something there because, like, with her, with this whole scandal happening, I got very like, I kind of was watching Ariana and I was like, this is triggering something. Like I've been cheated on before, and it's like I get it. I've been through that situation, but I noticed there was something else that was being triggered with it, and I thought that was something fascinating. And I definitely can see where there's something in her past where it's like, okay, there's something dark there. But that's what makes
I also
Vanderpump
find
Rules so great.
Yeah. And I also find James Kennedy to be incredibly watchable
Yes.
and so funny, even when he's mean.
Yes.
And so, like, that's going to be enjoyable to watch. But I also really do like Allie and hope, like, this is like a healthy relationship.
yeah.
And so I am hoping that he, like, chooses a path of full sobriety,
Mhm.
not just California sober, not just
Yes.
like, I think that's the best path for him, truly, if he would accept it.
Yeah.
It seems to be like a really good path for his mom. And his dad seems to think that you can just keep on partying till you die.
Yeah.
And that there's nothing wrong with any of it. So, you know, I think he's trying to walk kind of a balance, but at the last reunion, something that got kind of swept under the rug was that he got kicked out of a venue because he like sexually assaulted, like he slapped someone on the ass, and that's not okay. And he needs to figure out, I don't know, all of that. But we're seeing that actually, that's what's so interesting. These shows started when people were much younger, right? They were very young. And then now we're 10 years out and some of these same people are still on. And if you watch Southern Charm at all, you'll know that like they're really reevaluating their relationships with drugs and alcohol and trying to figure out like, does this mean I'm not fun anymore? Does this, you know, what does this mean about me? My whole personality was being like the crazy guy at a party, and now like it's actually not cool, and my job is in jeopardy, and my whole life is falling apart as a result of this.
And it's also this
You
kind
know?
of like, I always say Bravo and a lot of these shows started when it was more of the Wild West of reality shows. There wasn't like an ethical thing in it. It was like, let's pump them full of alcohol and like, and there's always, and Vanderpump Rules is probably the best at that. There always was a drug subtext. I mean, it was like, okay, like there's some Coke, there's some Adderall.
Southern Charm, for sure.
Oh yes. Like Southern Charm, I like, that reminds me too much of like my hometown. So I'm like, that one I come in and out of, but I just watched recently where like Shep's kind of addressing his like shit show behavior at BravoCon. And I'm like, I find that fascinating because it is something where like, you're on a reality show, you're on Bravo, you're being propped up for behaving badly, and you're kind of getting rewarded for it. And at the same
Until
time,
you aren't.
yes. And it's kind of like that tide turns. And I know I always like Intervention is probably one of my favorite reality shows, as dark as it is. And there's something about people getting in recovery and kind of bottoming out and kind of coming back up from it that I find very fascinating. And like, I actually like watching that on my screen. Like, I didn't really like Bronwyn, but I did appreciate her, like, her being so open about like, hey, like, I'm 3 weeks sober. Like, I should technically be in a treatment facility, but I'm not, and I'm filming it. And like, cause there was a realness to it. And like, and I like that. And I want to see that sometimes on Bravo. Cause it's like, I like seeing that arc because you're seeing like a full human experience with these people. And I feel like it's a beautiful thing. And I feel like on Vanderpump Rules, we're seeing it like, because I just recently watched season 3 with G. James Kennedy when he dated Kristen Doty. And that was like I had my friend watch it for an upcoming episode, and it was like Sheena's wedding to Shay, and like Shay's also a very dark person with addiction issues, and they're playing out. But you watch it back then and you're like, clearly James is so young. Like Kristen flat out punches him in the face, like stuff like that, where I'm like, you kind of been rewarded for some of this behavior, but now you are like dealing with it. But also, are they? Because again, it did get swept under the rug. Because I did catch that in the last reunion where he did sexually assault somebody like that. And it's not the first time. It's not the first time I've heard stuff like that. Like, I know that he has done other stuff, and you watch old episodes, and he's been doing that behavior forever.
And what's interesting is that like there are people who do that sober,
yes.
right? And then there's people who like don't remember doing it at all and would never do it if they were sober. And I think Shep falls in that category. Yes. I feel like James Kennedy falls in that category. And I hope that they choose a path of like 100% complete sobriety.
Yes.
Because they're all playing this game that they can change and like, okay, I'm not going to drink hard alcohol, or I'm going to smoke pot, but not. And it's like they can't handle, like it's not suiting them.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's people who completely stop and are sober, but they still have all of the qualities and tendencies that they had when they were using. And so I would actually count Bronwyn in that.
Yeah, no, totally. Because there was a lot. Because that was the other thing about Bronwyn that I found so fascinating was I was like, it's interesting because yes, she has substance abuse issues, but then also I'm like, you're dealing with like some type of like narcissism going on because she's still filming, and what is motivating her to be on camera during this? Because I'm like she should have been in a treatment center, and like camera should not have been, because like that's a very like volatile and a very like vulnerable time where it's like I almost think that's where cameras like do the intervention, but like when they're really in treatment and they're really serious about it, cameras, they really shouldn't be in that space. And also this also ties back to Jen Shaw, like the level of narcissism with her that she would go on a reality show knowing she did what she did. I find that so fascinating because, I mean, I know you follow a lot of Bravo people like I do, and it's like, we all are going to sniff this shit out. Like, if you have the skeletons in the closet, it's going to come out, like, regardless. Like, buckle up. And I find that, like, your quest for fame is that intense that you're willing to do that to yourself. I'm like, it's crazy.
It's absolutely wild.
Like, it's I love it. So are you excited for this upcoming season of Vanderpump Rules?
I am. I have some predictions. I feel like after watching the Vanderpump Rules panel at BravoCon, I feel as though some of the audience is going to kind of just really want to move past Scandival because we've been hearing about it forever, but we forget that this filming started, I think, in June, which was like only a few months after. And so, and then also Ariana just being very unwilling to like ever film with him or talk to him or anything like that, I think is going to annoy some of the viewers.
Yeah.
I think they're not going to respect the boundaries that she put together. And so I feel like that is going to all be a little weird, but I'm interested to see what else is happening. I really want to see, I think Lala and Katie kind of beef a bit, and I want to see that. I think that's interesting. I also really enjoy the relationship that Sheena and Lala have with both their moms and their daughters.
Mm-hmm.
So like they're having this like, 3 generations hanging out all the time. They're always like with their moms, and their moms are on their payroll, and I love it. It's so, I want to see more of their moms like all hanging out.
Yeah, I like that because I always like Lisa Vanderpump always stepped in like as like this like matriarchal figure, and I like having their moms there because it's like, Lisa, like you're not their actual, you were their boss, and it's kind of, I like having the moms there because it kind of breaks that theatric, and it kind of like, because I feel like Lisa Vanderpump, like I wish she would go back on Beverly Hills because I need like I need her to I need to see the farce of her. Like that's what she worked before, like because she would be on Beverly Hills kind of acting like kind of bad. You kind of see like the falsehood of what she kind of was and how she actually is. And then you see her on Vanderpump Rules and she's completely different. And I would like to see Vanderpump Rules Lisa on Beverly Hills more, but she always had that like pernicious like matriarchal figure. And like I've kind of over it now. And you were saying with the moms, like I like that. That's something that I want to see more of. Because I have noticed that last season where I was like, I like seeing the grandmother had a big relation. I think do Sheena and her mom live together? Do you know? Or
no, but her mom, I mean, maybe she stays there. Sometimes
okay.
her mom is a very big caregiver of her daughter, when her and Brock can't be there. And yeah, it's just really enjoyable to see these relationships. I love Terry Maloney. She is my absolute fave.
Yes.
I am a huge fan of her. I had her on my podcast after
did?
BravoCon.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Your
She's
podcast
lovely.
is like blowing up, I have to say. Like, I was like going through like old, because this is kind of get my outline. I was like, damn, I was like, Mandy's been doing this. Like, this is amazing. So
yeah, it's just been a lot of fun to, and she's been listening to my podcast for the last 3 years, which I didn't realize when we met at BravoCon. Yeah. So that was like, wait, what? You've been listening? That's crazy. She's like, yeah, it's really nice. I appreciate when people are kind of give a nuanced and kind perspective to it.
because like,
that kind of stuff.
Because that's something
all the
I've
moms
noticed before. Like, I know with me being a stand-up comic, like I go there, like Kathy Griffin, like has like, she's like my idol, and she has that, and like Joan Rivers and like Don Rickles, and like they're really the ones that I idolize. But like I also like, I've been severely bullied in my life, and like I try to have an empathy about it, but still try to like take the piss out of people. So I like it because there's that nuance, and it's like that's where you have to play anymore. Like you can be shady, but you still have to be empathetic to the person, and like I don't know. And that's what I like your podcast the most, is because you have that empathy, and like that's something that
I just
like a lot of Bravo podcasters, they don't have that, and I get a little annoyed by it.
Well, people treat them as characters, not real people.
Yes.
And it's so easy to sit back as a viewer being like, I would never behave that way. I would never make that decision. But like, you don't know. We're not on camera. We're not in these scenarios. We don't know how we would react if we were forced to confront someone.
Yes.
Yes. Like I would just not talk to that person for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Right. I wouldn't like
I'm like,
so who knows how we would act in these like unusual scenarios. And yeah, I don't think people are all bad or all good. And I'm very like, something that exhausts me and I've been frustrated with about Gen Z. And this isn't everyone in Gen Z. It's just like this sort of trend of like everything being black and white, good and evil, oppressed or oppressor. Like everyone has to fall into a category and they are binary, and there is no overlap and there is no room for gray. And I think like I live in the gray. We all live in the gray. The world is in the gray. Things are not as clear cut as I think young people really want them to be.
Yes.
And I find people who watch Bravo will be like, well, this is a good person and this is a bad person. This person is racist and it's like, it's
so much bigger
racism,
than that.
All of that is so much more complicated. The whole Dorit versus Garcelle situation.
Yes.
They're not even viewing it as black and white as the viewers have taken to it.
Because that's the thing. I was like, there's this, it's so layered and it's nuanced and it's complicated. And that's the thing, like human lives, the human experience is complicated. It's messy. There's, and people have the capacity to be really good and to be really bad. And people can fluctuate through that. And that's what adds richness to life. And when that's captured in a reality show, it's like that's what captivates me, because it's like, some of these housewives, I'm like, yeah, they have like some really dark qualities, but there's also like really good qualities to them. Like, and I like seeing that whole experience.
Like, it's just very obnoxious. So I don't like people view Bravo as like, well, this person, or I'm team this person. I'm team, like, come on. Like, you don't have to be team an entire person and defend every single thing that they do. That's crazy. Yeah. But, you can take someone's side in an argument. That's fine. You don't need to harass the other party online. You don't need to it just doesn't have to go that far.
Yeah, don't go online and post hateful shit about people. Like, don't, like, that's what I'm like, don't tag people. Like, I'm good. Like, let me just talk. But all right. So wrapping up, do you have any experiences with the paranormal? What are your take on like the paranormal?
Less about like, I don't know if it's paranormal, but I do believe in spirits, and I do believe, my mom has passed, and I do believe that she sends signs.
Okay.
And that she, helps, I don't know, guide me on my path. So I believe that kind of stuff, but I don't really spend a lot of time thinking about like haunted people.
No, because I'm a paranormal investigator, and it's like I always ask people, I'm like, do you have any experience with the paranormal? But I get what you're saying, because that is something I
do have one experience. I stayed overnight in not like quite a hotel, more like an inn in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania.
Gettysburg's the best. I was just there.
And my friend and I stayed overnight, and we found out like later that the room was on one of those TV shows.
Yeah.
About like, I don't know what the
Do you watch any of those? Because like,
no.
Because like, there's two brands of reality shows that I'm obsessed with. Bravo, and I love paranormal reality shows. Like, I really want to get some of the Bravo podcasters to watch like an episode of Ghost Adventures with Zach Bagans, because Zach uses a lot of the Bravo theatrics, and that's what's driving the show. It's yes, it's about the ghosts and the ghost hunting, but he also just has this delusional quality to him that is very reminiscent of like Vanderpump Rules, or like he has that quality, and it's so fascinating to me. Like, that's something, next time you come on, I'll have you watch an episode of Ghost Adventures. I can give you several that it's going to engage your Bravo brain, and you're going to be like, oh my God.
I may be a little scared. I don't like feeling scared. I don't like scary movies. So I don't know if these shows would feel scary, or if they don't seem as real, but
yeah. And also
they're probably less intense than like a movie that's literally set up to scare you.
Yeah, that's true. Like, there definitely is moments where it's like, and Zach also panders to like, he tries to be like the darkest ghost hunter ever, but it's all a farce and a facade. And it's like, when you watch it with that lens, you're kind of like, I don't know. It's not. And also, I'm a professional paranormal investigator. So like, ghost stuff is like, I'm not really like, I love it. So I'm not afraid of it, if that makes sense. But I love it. So where can we find you? Where can we listen to the podcast? This has been such a great episode. I'm so excited you came on.
Oh, thank you so much. So you can find me on Instagram primarily. I'm on Twitter, but I'm trying to kind of remove myself from that a little bit, just because it's
toxic.
Really, it's very toxic, and it's not funny. Like, you can't find all the Good Housewives stuff anymore the way that you used to. And the politics stuff is pretty crappy, and the other things that I follow, it's just toxic.
Yeah.
So at Mandy Slutsker, that's Mandy, Slut, Sker, pretty easy to find me. And you can listen to my podcast, Is This Real Life, with Mandy Slutsker, anywhere that podcasts are broadcast.
Excellent. And with that, I'm moving back up to space.